Hi everyone, my name is Zoe, and for those of you who don't know me, I manage the legal finance and accounting team here at Career Legal. I'm delighted to welcome you all here today for our live panel discussion, Getting Comfortable with the Uncomfortable. And thank you so much for taking an interest in a topic that's extremely important to us here at Career Legal, HYF and DVF. As I'm sure most of you are aware, we take diversity and inclusion very seriously as a company. And in light of recent developments around this area, we wanted to make sure that we keep the topic moving in the right direction. I'd like to pass you over to Ashlyn, who will be our host for the duration of the webinar. Over to you, Ashlyn.
Thanks, Zoe. Unfortunately, due to something that came up last minute, I'll be our host for the webinar, so I hope that's okay. My name is Ashlyn Corcoran. I'm the marketing manager for Career Legal, DVF recruitment and HYF recruitment. Just one thing before we start, if you want to put any questions forward to our speakers at any time, you have the email. It's adminmarketing@careerlegal.co.uk, and we'll keep an eye on it. So hopefully we'll have time at the end to answer any questions. So we have a great panel of speakers here today who are really passionate about diversity and inclusion like ourselves, and who've kindly agreed to discuss the topic with us today and their own personal experience. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our four speakers. So we have Clarissa Coleman, who is a partner and chair of diversity and inclusion in London in K&L Gates. We have Reg Amoa, who is the Diversity and Inclusion Advisor at Norton Rose Fulbright. We have Shabnam Ali Khan, who is a Senior Associate at Russell Cook Solicitors, and Sephora Amlan Oshu, who is a public speaker and facilitator and founder of Sephora Amlan Enterprise. So to kick things off, we're going to learn a bit more about our speakers and their background. So our first question, I'm just going to put it out to everyone. Tell us a bit about your own personal experience and background around diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And I'm going to ask Clarissa to first answer, if that's okay.
Hello, everyone. It's lovely to be speaking to you today. I'm passionate about diversity and inclusion, and I think it's the inclusion part that's so important in that statement. Diversity in and of itself doesn't help unless we're all feeling included. My background is that both my grandfathers and then on the other side, great grandfathers came to England as immigrants. And it was through being included in society and education that they were able to make a life in England as doctors, as professionals. And I want to make sure that in our world, and especially in law, that we have an open workplace where everyone, no matter what background, what their gender, what their persuasion is, have an equal opportunity to succeed and to do well and to thrive. Things have changed over the last 20 years since I became a lawyer, and I must say for the better. And we are in a different world than we were 20 years ago. When I started, I was told by the woman partner in my department, the only woman partner I should add, all the other partners were male, who had wives who did not work and didn't really understand why women with children would want to work. So the woman partner said to me, never talk about family issues, always speak with a low voice because you'll be taken more seriously, and never, ever speak out for women's issues. Later, when I was pregnant with my second child, I was told by the young male partner he was never going to have another woman of childbearing age on a case again, having sworn at me and used the F word. Now, we've moved so far from that, and I'm pleased to say that we expect our women to have children. We expect, and the male lawyers also want to be part of their families and see their kids, and COVID, if anything, has shown that we can all work more from home and spend more time with our families. And yet we have so far to go. Last year, when we looked at gender diversity, only 28% of women were in senior positions in law and 45% at GC level. And yet 60% of in-house lawyers are women. When we look at our intake in law firms, at entry level, it's now 70-40. Within 2 years, 2 to 3 years qualified, it becomes 50-50. By the time you're an income partner, you're somewhere between 20 and 30%, and still only 11% of equity partners are women. When we look at the BAME women, it's even worse. Men are 6 times more likely to be made a partner in a law firm than a BAME woman. I mean, that is just ridiculous and such a loss of talent. I was speaking to one of my clients who does data and looks at data in the diversity space, Fort Explore. They did a survey which found that women are twice as likely to be interrupted when speaking than if a man is speaking. These things just show how far we've got to go. In terms of gender equality, and the pay gap is getting worse, not better. In a survey in 2015, King's College Women's Leadership ran it. They found that it would take 110 years for gender pay equality. And yet when they ran it again in 2018, it was 214 years. So we've got a big challenge ahead of us. I'm not going to jump into what I think we should do because I think we're addressing that later. But the point is we've got a lot to do, but we are moving in the right direction.
Well, at least we're moving in the right direction, I guess. Reg, over to you. Let me just hang on 1 second. You might notice that Reg is muted, or not muted, frozen, but hopefully we'll be able to hear him. I can't seem to unmute him. Reg, can you unmute yourself there? I don't seem to be able to.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Brilliant. Okay, can you see me?
We cannot see, well, we can see a frozen version of you, but that's okay.
No worries. Okay, so my experience. So growing up as I suppose a black child in East London, I was always conscious of the fact that I was an outsider because I play around with the other white kids and they might call me names or refer to my color of my skin. So I was conscious of it. And, you know, sometimes they'll say something and apologize, but I was conscious of it. I've always had kind of like an affinity for inclusion because I wanted to be included as well. Got to school and firstly, my school was all white. I went to secondary school and there's a few more black people and that was great. But I was from, the majority of the black kids were from the Caribbean background. I was African, so my name was different. And so I was still an outsider. And then I had to, I think, I had my first fight in school and suddenly I was like authentically black because I can fight. To be a black boy, you have to fight. So, but that was problematic because my cousin had been killed as a result of the fight when I was 7. So it was kind of, I felt it was kind of ironic that for me to be kind of accepted that I had to, I guess, fight someone and win that looked like me. And that was problematic. And so all through my life, I was getting these different traumas. I mean, I think when I was 15, a guy that lived on my road, he went to my school, he was stabbed and he was in intensive care for a long time. So yeah, and so I wanted to escape. So I thought if I get to university, then, you know, they told me I could pass all the exams. And if I did all the right things, then I'd be on the other side. And then I wouldn't have to live in a council place. I would be able to afford things. I wouldn't have to worry about whether I could afford trainers or not. You know, it would all be good. But then when I went through that process, and it was, you know, it was a great experience for me. I got to study in America. That kind of broadened my horizons. I came back and I got into the workplace. Then I found like there was a different kind of experience where they weren't calling me blackie or darkie, but they were doing things in a way that made me feel like I didn't belong. So one job, I used to go in, say hello to people, and as I walked off, someone mixed my accent, so they were like, "Oh, what, Mutt?" I'm like, "I don't sound like that now." So and because I'm an outsider, I always analyze things more closely. So I'm breaking it down and thinking, like, why has he done that? So I figured he's trying to show me that I don't belong, because by me being there, it dilutes the caliber of the people in his eyes. So I had to think, well, I can either start speaking with received pronunciation and to try and fool people thinking I'm intelligent, but it's not going to change what's in my head. So I didn't bother to do that. And I thought, I'm going to just, I won't change my accent. I'll change my career aspirations. Because I was working at the Foreign Office at that time, and I wanted to be a diplomat, because I kind of thought, well, I don't want people to fight. I want to stop people killing each other. I want to stop wars. Let me go and do that. But they didn't want me. So I thought, let me go and do something else. But at that same time, I'd come back to my area, and a lot of the people that I was trying to avoid when I was younger, they were looking out for me. And the reason they were looking out for me was because they heard I'd gone to uni and they were struggling and they wanted help. And so I realized that I wasn't supposed to fight against them. I was supposed to fight for them. So I started putting myself into careers where I was basically trying to help like younger versions of myself, or, you know, my people from like working class communities, or people of color, should we say. I was trying to help them get over a wall, like, because there were just barriers there, you know, and I was facing them myself. And I wasn't even like, you know, I had kind of changed myself to fit in, and I wasn't even the raw type of like black person, if you like. And if they can't deal with me and I'm facing problems, how other people gonna get through? So I was just trying to do what I could, and I was in certain roles where, like, maybe it was managing a youth program, I'm just trying to, I guess, make people palatable so they can just get in. And then I got to a point where things just weren't working for me, and I thought, why isn't it working? Like, when I experience things, like I tend to gravitate towards other black people because they experience the same reality, and with white people they don't get it. So I realized there's a difference there, and the only way to get over that is to create proximity. And so I started getting interested in D&I. And the ironic thing was, I would always be the only black guy in the room. So I'm thinking, how's this thing going to be solved, right? When you don't have anyone, you're talking about race, you don't have I mean, sometimes there are black women, but there's very rarely black men. And like, there's a very specific thing about being a black man and trying to get through in the world of work, or people, and the way people relate to you. So I thought, I need to get on the other side of the fence. And so I did what I needed to do, kind of built up my profile on LinkedIn, and I managed to get on the other side. And so I didn't come into it with a long background in diversity and inclusion, but what I did come in with was a lived experience and an understanding of what it's like when people will, I don't know, denigrate Africa just because one thing has happened there, they've heard on the news, or like there was one occasion where there was a program for people on my team. It was like a program for women, and I said, "Oh, how comes like my two colleagues get this program and there's nothing for me?" And they said, "Well, women are underrepresented," and they said that to me with a straight face, like. So I was like, "Oh, I get it. I'm invisible. All right, cool." So I was seeing lots of these things, and then there were other things where people will, like, someone just has to suggest that you've done something wrong, and then automatically, like, because of the, I don't know, unconscious bias, people will just assume you're at fault. And so I was carrying a lot of this, and then, you know, you've still got like black kids like dying like it ain't even funny, and no one seems to care. It doesn't resonate with anyone. So I'm carrying all of that, and I realize I've got to get into a space where the gatekeepers are, so I can explain to them what needs to happen, because a lot of the gatekeepers don't even know the gates are locked. And so I had to, so that, yeah, that's basically why I'm where I am and why I'm in Norton Rose. I chose to go to a law firm because it's seen as very elitist. And I thought, if I can at least get people to have some kind of empathy, by me being in close proximity to them, then I might be able to open some doors, and there might be less kids dying because of lack of an opportunity. And so that's why I'm here today.
Reg, that's really inspiring. Thanks. I'll pass over the question to Shabnam.
Can you hear me? Brilliant, thanks. Yeah, it's wonderful to be able to speak at this event today, and it's fantastic that we've got so many people, which just shows just how important diversity is, and it's really at the forefront. In terms of my background, I'm a solicitor with Russell Cook Solicitors, and I originally trained to be a barrister, but I'll come on to that in just a moment. But similar to Clarissa, my parents are from both of them are immigrants from Pakistan. They're from relatively poor families in Pakistan, which is, you know, even poorer by UK standards. And they've both worked really, really hard when they came to this country, especially my mum, you know, learning the language from watching TV, having racist treatment, you know, back in the late 60s, early 70s as well. So I really have a lot of respect for them. They've both worked really hard. My mum has mainly done cleaning jobs ever since we were little, just to help, you know, pay for things. And I remember when we were growing up, we didn't have a lot of money, and it was only really when my mum started working, when we were all really young, that we were able to eat better. Just things like that that you kind of take for granted a bit now. But they really encouraged such a strong work ethic. And I knew from a young age that I was from, you know, female, Asian, Muslim, from a working class family from East London, that I knew that opportunities were going to be a little bit different. And I think you do become aware of that. And it's a bit weird, but sort of similar to Reg saying, you know, he was at school with primarily white people. It was a bit like that when I was growing up at secondary school. And there was also this conception, I suppose, that if you were white female, you were more attractive as well. It's kind of weird, but I was very conscious of that growing up. And I was very aware of that you were viewed as less attractive or less beautiful because of the color of your skin, because of your ethnicity. And it's something that's been there throughout my life, really. But I wasn't really, in terms of the career side of it, it only really became apparent when I was maybe at university, that I thought, yeah, this is going to be a little bit harder for me. And when I was at university, I was surrounded by, I mean, I went to a reasonable uni, but it was a lot of Oxbridge rejects where I was. So I was very aware that there were people from quite middle class, upper class backgrounds that had, you know, these aspirations. They had a lot of contacts as well. I didn't have contacts. I don't have contacts. My parents don't know lawyers, and, you know, they just don't have that. So I became aware of it when I was at university. But I think what I did to help me, and just as a sort of positive bit of advice, is, you know, I got involved in things. I got involved in societies. I was on the Law Society. I did a fair bit of networking and just sort of got myself around to know people and try to connect. But it was when I went to bar school that it was even more of a wave, when I realized that, you know, having those contacts and being from a particular background was definitely going to help. And I think, you know, with what people are saying, and to keep it positive, we are moving in the right direction and things are getting a lot better. And I've had generally quite good experiences in the work environment. Before I moved into private practice, I used to work for a government funded body called the Leasehold Advisory Service. And bizarrely, there were actually more people from BAME backgrounds there. So that was really good, and it encouraged that in terms of recruitment as well. So the kind of people that we were interviewing and were applying for those roles were also from similar backgrounds. And I think that was fantastic. Diversity and inclusion, you know, because of my background, it's so important to me. It's something I'm really passionate about. And I know Clarissa sort of comes from similar background with her parents and her family as well. So just to echo that, it's so important to me. I'm part of the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Forum at Russell Cook. You know, I try to get involved. I try to encourage particularly young lawyers that are coming through from university. So I've been doing a bit more work with South Bank University, for example. We have a vacation scheme at Russell Cook Solicitors, and Russell Cook are, you know, they've got a way to go. Let's be honest, let's be realistic, but things are improving. So they're a lot more open now in terms of recruitment and the kind of events that we run, the people that we're trying to attract to Russell Cook. We don't want people to feel that we're too corporate and stuffy and we're very white, even though, to be fair, we are largely white. So that's something that's improving. But Russell Cook are open to it. So we have, when we did the VAC scheme last year, we had a South Bank student, which I was really, really keen on. We had a Kingston student. And it's not about making things easier for people from BAME backgrounds, but it's because they don't need it to be easier. They just want it to be the same as it is for everybody else. There are many talented, creative, wonderful people from these backgrounds, from female backgrounds, different classes as well. It's about the opportunity. And I think that's something that I'm really, really passionate about. And I think that's why it's important to me. And it's kind of driven me. And I think my parents have driven me as well. They've kind of pushed me in a good way, because I come from an Asian background, and I was lucky that they weren't too traditional, that, you're a female, you're going to get married and learn to cook and everything. I've done one of those. I'm not great at cooking, but, they were very keen on, especially my mum was very keen on her daughters. There's six children, 3 girls and 3 boys. She was very keen on the girls having just as much opportunity to education as the rest of the family. And I'm really proud, like, me and my siblings are the first university graduates from our generation, and and within the family as well. But I think we are going in the right direction, and I just want to sort of end by saying that I think you need to use your diversity to your advantage now, and just be aware that it is in the forefront of a lot of people's minds when it comes to law firms and workplaces in general. It's in the firm's interest to be showing that they're more diverse, they're more open, not just ticking boxes and doing courses online, but actually actively changing the way they recruit. And we'll come on to that later. I don't want to sort of cover it too much now. But yeah, use your diversity to your advantage. Use the fact that you are from a different background. You maybe have access to different languages, different cultures, different behaviors. Use it to your advantage. It sets you apart from people. It shows that you're adaptable as well, especially living in UK, in London. You are still in the minority, so definitely use it to your advantage. But yeah, as Clarissa was saying as well, just to echo her comments, we are moving in the right direction. There's still a long way to go, but it's going the right way. Thanks very much.
Absolutely, I definitely agree. And I think what you said about using it to your advantage is spot on, because we've even noticed that a lot of companies are definitely prioritizing diversity more recently since the beginning of COVID, and it's great to see. Sephora, same question over to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sephora Amlan. So I'm the founder of Sephora Amlan Enterprise, and what I do with that specifically is facilitation work. So I do workshop facilitation, personal development, and I've done it with a law firm, and I also do it with various organizations. But alongside that, I am also working in a Magic Circle firm such as Freshfields in their responsible business area, where I've been there for the past few months. And I'm currently there on placement. So it's been a very good experience and an eye-opener, doing it coming from both angles. Where did the love of diversity and inclusion come from? So my background is quite interesting. I'm originally from Côte d'Ivoire. I was born in France. My parents decided that they wanted me to have a better opportunity, to have better opportunities in the UK and to be bilingual. So I came here when I was about 6 or 7. And because again, they thought I would benefit from the English system and from the English schooling. And then I started school. Imagine not being able to say much words and having everybody tease me because I would say mayonnaise, bonjour, and I wouldn't be able to really pronounce certain things. But that was really interesting. And I think that was really a good start of me being open to another culture. But what was very interesting about that is, as I got older, I was very involved in the Ivorian community, and once there was a crisis within our community where we had a civil war around 2011, and I had the leader of the diasporan community say to me, we need a young person who will be able to help lead the students, the young people within the community, because a lot of them have barriers with English, who may have come from the Ivory Coast of France and will need to integrate themselves. And I think this was I would say the first step towards what I call my purpose, because for me, being somebody that was always very engaged, I said, why not? It was a voluntary role. And I did that for 3 years. And that's where I really got to start to, I really got a taster, I guess, of diversity. I got a taster of social mobility. I got a taster of really being a community leader, and wanting to help people and seeing the impact that, you know, young people have, as well as organization has, in recruiting young people and in providing internships and all of those various opportunities. So that was a very, very good experience. And as I kind of went along and started my professional life, you know, graduating after uni, going into PMO and project management, you know, I then, you know, became a minority within the workplace. I was probably one of the first Black person to be recruited in this management consulting firm that I was working at. And I really felt the importance of inclusion, as many of the other speakers have touched upon. Is one thing just to recruit somebody of color, and it's another thing to keep them within the organization. It's another thing to be able to ensure that they are able to integrate themselves. And I believe that not all of us are supposed to be the same. We're all equally different. And I think that's what creates a diversity of thought, and that's what makes an organization stand out and become better. Because as people become more diverse, clients become more diverse. You don't always have clients with the same background. We're seeing a rise of various startups and etc. And I think for me, because I had experienced a lot of things within my workplace, and because I didn't feel like I fitted in, it made me want to be an advocate and a voice because of my experience. So it goes from the community, grassroots, to then being in the corporate sector and then trying to find my voice. And gradually, that's what pushed me to become a workshop facilitator. That's what pushed me to open up my organization, because I realized, you know, I have to work with those who are young to help them with their mindset and a growth mindset to integrate themselves, because they're the ones that are the future. And they're the ones who are now going to be in the working environment. And I don't want people to think just because they don't fit in, especially if they're coming from a disadvantaged background like myself, having grown up in Peckham at the time where it wasn't as trendy as it is now, and have to then integrate themselves in society. I didn't want them to feel like they had to quit. I didn't want them to feel like because they were having certain difficulties, it meant that it was the end. And that's what pushed me to become a facilitator and help to change the mindset and help people to transition into a corporate, into the corporate world much smoothly, knowing that they're not alone in facing some difficulties or feeling like maybe they don't really fit in. So that's where my love and my passion for that diversity and inclusion came from, just wanting to help individuals really integrate themselves and also really challenge organizations to think differently. And I know that it's a journey, and I wanted it to be quite a medium where both of us could understand one another, because we're dealing with people within, especially whether it's the legal sector or other corporate sectors, because I've had the opportunity to work in both the financial sector and the legal sector. I know that it's something where a lot of people may not understand, and it's coming to a place of making people understand, and in a way in which creates a very transparent and open conversation. I think it requires, you know, a lot of people who are, whether you're from BAME, especially from the BAME community, I'm speaking specifically of that because it's my area of expertise, to really sit with management and be able to have transparent conversations and honest conversations about who they really are and how they feel working in a certain environment. So that's just I don't want to spoil too much and give everything away, but that's a bit of an idea of my background, of my love for diversity inclusion, of the fact that as well that I'm very passionate as well social mobility, and believe that social mobility, funny enough, is like a brother, has a sibling relationship with diversity and inclusion, because you realize that with social mobility, it does play a role. And sometimes we think that it's just BAME that is the only aspect of diversity. But what about people coming from coastal areas or different parts of the UK that are quite impoverished and that have the right opportunities for them to excel? So I look at all of those different areas. Thank you.
I'm glad you brought up social mobility, because, you know, I wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of that. And I guess since we're already on you, Sephora, I will let you take the mic then.
No problem. Yeah, social mobility. I'm a product of social mobility. So I feel like the passion is even, it can probably, hopefully you can feel it from your screen. I started off, I remember being in school and hearing about the city brokerage. And that was my first kind of taster of getting an opportunity to work in the corporate world. So I was able to work for UBS. And then luckily, again, I got asked to come back. So I did two internships there in both human resources and wealth management. And even in school, I remember my mentor actually being from Ernst & Young. And I think that was my first exposure to a really corporate professional, being the fact that my parents, my mum's a civil servant now, and my stepfather who's raised me is a bus driver. I wasn't exposed to a lot of professional people. And having had programs that enabled me to participate and enter the corporate world and get a taster of that, I think for me was very critical in enabling me to be who I am today, being able to adapt, being able to do both community work and adapt with kind of grassroots leaders and doing stuff as well like that. And also being a city professional, knowing how to adapt professionally and speak to very senior people within an organization. I was able to have both, both those experiences, which I think is crucial. Why do I think social mobility ties around diversity? Is because diversity is not just made out of just race or sex or sexual orientation, It's also to do with a lot of people who are coming from social disadvantaged backgrounds. You'll meet a young person who, regardless of whether they consider themselves to have a different sexual orientation or different race, if they are coming from a very poor background, they have very limited opportunities. Okay, and them having limited opportunities means that they don't have access to being able to work in the corporate world. And what does that happen? It means that especially I'm going to speak in an example of the legal sector because of just the theme, is you then have people who are the same, who are coming from very similar backgrounds, who are coming from very similar family structures, etc., or schools, or educational backgrounds, universities, coming into the corporate world and repeating kind of the same things in the same cycles. If we are there to have diversity of thought, if we are there to provide a lot of diversity, unfortunately, a lot of, most of people who may come from BAME or etc. are most likely, like myself, coming from poor backgrounds. Not everyone, but the majority, it has been proven in studies, a lot of studies have shown it, are coming from much more poorer backgrounds. And on top of that, what about people who are coming from very coastal areas? What about people who are, in up north or in different parts of the UK who don't have the same opportunities as people as well that are coming from London or cities like London or bigger cities? So I believe that once we look at that and once we're able to recruit and provide young people, especially those who can do internships in organizations, especially future or aspiring lawyers, which I have a lot of the pleasure to doing in my work, in my day-to-day job, doing a lot of virtual internships and seeing the impact it has when a young person is saying, I didn't think I would fit in. I didn't think that a Magic Circle firm was open to me. That already is inviting them to think that diversity is possible. So that's why I call them and I refer to them as siblings, because social mobility is going to be a very big part of the diversity strategy for any kind of law firm or any other corporate organization to be able to thrive and provide and enable their workforce to be more diverse and make sure that they're included.
Absolutely. Reg, do you have anything to add to that? Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I would say, like, for us at Norton Rose, like, social mobility is front and center of our D&I strategy now. I mean, we've always run the Prime program. So I was even running the Prime program for a charity before I went into Norton Rose. So I guess that was like my crossover role. But yeah, so we always had the Prime program, which is like a work experience program, and we're running that virtually next month. But I mean, we didn't have like an employee network for it when I first started, but we do now. So that's something which I feel like we've really made progress on during my time. So it's something that, and the thing is, social mobility cuts across like everybody, because whatever your situation is, it's exacerbated by the fact that you don't have money. Yeah. So we're now looking at that, and because we now have the forum to as a forum to discuss these things, we can. It just means that that diversity in itself is more inclusive, because there are people within the firm that they might be too male for the gender discussion, or they might be too white for the BAME discussion, but yet they feel they've got disadvantage. And so until you have a discussion about social mobility, you can never really address anything else, because if you tell someone that they've got white privilege and they live in a council flat in Dagenham or Grays or wherever, and their whiteness doesn't feel to have been any advantage to them, then then it falls on deaf ears. And I think it's just given us this, bringing social mobility into the diversity space. I mean, it should have always been there anyway, but bringing it into the diversity space really just means that we can achieve a lot more and see where the gaps are. I mean, at the moment, I'm dealing with a situation where we're just not getting young, say, boys or young men onto our work experience schemes, overwhelmingly female in terms of our graduate intake. It's more balanced, but there's definitely a lot more females. And I suppose until I was there, I didn't see anyone bringing that up. But because of my own diversity, yes, there is value in diversity. And so because of the value in my own difference, I'm able to see that there's an issue. And it's something that we do need to address, because from my own personal experience, I know that the lack of social mobility for young men is directly linked to the violence that we see on our streets from all ethnicities. And, it's something that I hope now that we can address, because it's just where if we don't have that discussion, then it impacts on the gender discussion. So, I work in HR overwhelmingly female, like the only black guy in there. And so when we talk about things like gender balance, we need to have like the fuller discussion on balance, because there are some areas that are overwhelmingly female and some that are overwhelmingly male. And it's not just about getting, for a better word, white middle class women into leadership positions. It's about looking at the intersectionality of the situation. And, if we need to kind of be inclusive of everyone within the diversity and inclusion space. All right, that's me. Oh, I can't hear you guys.
Sorry, we'll actually touch on, what we think we can change about all that in a little bit later. Clarissa, have you anything you want to add?
Yeah, just a few words, because it's the one thing that our associates and new recruits want us to do to improve social mobility in our firm and in the legal workplace. It's a really strong common theme, and I think we're not really going to deal with diversity issues until we change our pipeline. And to change the pipeline, we need to be encouraging more people to join and want to see law and the legal profession as their home. So we do things like into uni, go into schools, the SEO program, and I work together with the Metropolitan Police and Cummins to do a program for BAME schoolgirls taking GCSEs in Hackney and Tower Hamlets. And these are girls that look at the city from their home all the time, but didn't feel it was a place they could work or a home that they could be in. And it was an amazing program over the year where we helped them with revision, we did psychometric testing, we showed the wealth of careers within a law firm or police or in-house that aren't just legal professions, but BD, HR, IT, and to see them grow and have those mentors and role models, that's where we've got to start at school, and not even A-level, pre-GCSE. And I think, having just gone through COVID, it's only worse. I know the private schools have had online lessons throughout the period, but so many state schools haven't. So many people and I think about our girls doing the program, wouldn't have had access to iPads and computers to be able to even access online learning. And I know we were speaking in America, we had one of our talks from the about people going back to correspondence courses for university and courses. Equally, you know, a lot of universities had online exams. If you are in a house where either you don't have online access or you've got 5 people round the kitchen table, it's completely different from someone taking an exam in a quiet study away from everyone else. So I do worry about COVID and the fact that we're only making it harder for so many people to join our profession.
Absolutely. I'm going to go on to our last question, but probably, you know, our most important question. So I guess, given the recent Black Lives Matter movement and how key it's been and how important of a light it's shed on the topic, and it has brought it to the forefront of so many conversations, which is really positive. But what would you like to see further happen to keep these positive changes moving in a good direction? And, you know, have you any advice or tips on how companies can maybe embrace a more diverse workforce? I'll put that question to Shabnam first, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's great. Yes, something that I've thought about quite a lot, you know, the BLM movement, and it's different for me because obviously I come from an Asian background, so I'll have a slightly different angle to it from someone that, you know, maybe is from a Black background. But I think it's definitely shed, like you say, an important light on that conversation. Thankfully, it's a conversation that we've been having to a certain degree for a number of years. So diversity and inclusion has been at the forefront for a few years. And I think the recent BLM, you know, the protests and the police brutality and everything else that's happened has sort of pushed it even more, propelled it even more to the forefront, which I think is great. It's fantastic. It needed to have happened, and there needs to be. We need to continue that momentum. We need to continue that conversation. I'm a little bit mindful that it's kind of slowly creeping back a bit. So I think we need to carry it on, and we need to focus on the good things that can come out of it and how we can carry on to improve, you know, not only sort of the BLM side of it, but also just the broader diversity and inclusion that everyone has picked up on, you know, with social mobility as well. It's a fine line though, because I think you need to have that balance where you do respect that different backgrounds will each have their own struggles and nuances in terms of their life, but there also needs to be an overall, we need to change this, you know, we need to bring more diversity into the workspace. So I think BLM has definitely been a great part of that. It's encouraging this conversation. We all need to have this conversation. And I was talking to my husband about it earlier. We come from very different backgrounds, and he was kind of helping me a little bit in terms of, you know, how other people think about it. And, you know, we were sort of saying that it's getting all of us to look at ourselves. So look at our own backgrounds and also look at our own actions, opinions and thoughts. And also to think, what am I doing? How am I behaving that might be translated into unconscious bias? You know, whether it's with my colleagues or whether it's to do with recruiting or just people generally that I see. And how am I affecting other people? What can I do to maybe change or adapt or educate myself? And I think that conversation, the BLM sort of conversation, needs to make us all be accountable for it. So whether you're Black, you're female, you're Asian, you're a partner in a law firm, you're a paralegal, we all have a voice. We're all important. We can all be an impetus for change. That conversation needs to happen top down as well as, you know, down up. So I think in terms of advice, if you feel that you are in a junior position in a firm, so if you're a trainee or a paralegal, for example, you need to have that conversation, you know, go to meetings, be part of the ED&I forums if you've got them in your workplace. If you haven't, that needs to be, you know, why we need to sort that out. Don't be afraid to speak out, you know, speak to the partners, get things to the board and try to make those changes. And I think in terms of positive things that firms could be doing, again, it's improving, but I know with Magic Circle firms, it's horrendous, the lack of diversity. But I think people that are in those positions of recruitment, they do need to be getting feedback from other people. They do need to be looking at sort of having more diversity in terms of recruitment panels. So, because that's the thing, it's not going to change, is it? Because a lot of the people in those top positions it's very grey up there, isn't it, to be honest? And I know when I used to go to events, and it's still not great, it was just a sea of white faces, and I was loud. I'm a loud person, and I'm trying to use that to my advantage. So I think it's to keep that conversation going, also to encourage empowerment. So we're not saying we're making it easier for people from Black backgrounds or Asian backgrounds or females or working class. We don't want it to be easier for us. We just want to have the resources and the opportunities, because we're just as bright as the next person. And I think Reg touched on this point about privilege. And I think it's also everyone, if you are in a position of privilege, helping other people, what can you do to, shed more light on it? And I've noticed it a bit on social media and influencers on Instagram, sort of, try to use their platform for good. And I'm just sort of worried that might fizzle out a little bit. But I think in terms of privilege, there's, they call it white privilege, which is a very blanket term, but there is a lot of social mobility disparity within white people as well. I mean, my husband is from a really, really working class background, and he said himself that he has been hindered and had obstructions throughout his life because of being from a working class background. So it's addressing all of that as well, really. But I'm going to leave it there, because I know there's lots of other useful things to be coming. But just very quickly, be confident is what I would say. If you are from a sort of background that you want to encourage diversity, believe in yourself and be authentic. Don't try to act like people in those upper echelons in organizations. As I said before, embrace your differences, embrace your diversity. We want to change it. So try and change it from within. So always be yourself. Be yourself.
Absolutely. Sephora?
Yes, so I'm going to try and hopefully be as brief and direct. I was going to say, hopefully there's a diversity champion within the organization. If you know somebody that is an advocate of diversity that's quite senior, partner, I encourage, if you're more junior, to approach them. That's a really good way to do so. If you don't feel like you have a diversity champion, be one. And I know that's quite tricky, and I know some people are thinking about how. Be somebody that is solution orientated. Don't be a complainer. If you go to a senior person with you saying that you're not satisfied with what's going on and etc., but you're not providing a solution, then it's not gonna go across the room, because every person that's leading and that is at a senior, in the senior position, wants solution orientated people. You come there with a problem, but you also come with a solution. So take your time to assess your environment and understand what are some key solutions that can be built. Hopefully there's like a Black affinity network that's within the organization. If so, then definitely this is an opportunity for you to carry out surveys, to really put in some events, to really kind of organize certain things within the organization, especially with Black History Month coming. Those are just some ideas. But also one thing that I would say that's worked really well is find allies, create an opportunity for there to be allies within the organization. Ensure there's some senior people in there. Having allies is a very good way to have it, because you need to make people involved in finding the solution and being part of change. People want to be a part of the story. People want to be a part of a legacy. Yes, not some people don't necessarily want to work hard, but they do want to be a part of the people who were able to do something about it. So create an allyship. That will be very, very useful. I would say another thing stems from education. So really recommend as well with your team, or to about getting some training, whether it's unconscious bias, get some training available, and that's another way of providing a solution. Going and finding somebody, not just saying go and find someone, but look out, do your research, find people that will fit within maybe the legal environment or the corporate environment, wherever you're in the financial sector, etc., and maybe get some training available as well. So I mean, those are some of the tips that I do have. for you. I probably got a plethora of different things, but I think those are some really, really good tips, especially within law firms about the allyship. I think people need to be involved in the story, find a way to, and be solution orientated. I can't stress that enough. I learned that throughout my career, and it has opened doors for me, being known as somebody that comes with solutions.
I think that's actually really good advice, because, you know, I think we all know those people who do complain and they just aren't proactive about it. So I think that's really good advice. Reg, unmute yourself. I'll put the same question to you, if that's okay. Reg, are you there?
Can you hear me? Yep. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, so some of the things that I've done whilst I've been at the firm, I'll say I've had what I might term informal reverse mentoring. So I've had a lot of FaceTime with senior colleagues, and I mean that's really helped. So what that does is it means that they have a greater understanding, and it kind of amplifies my voice. So a lot of the things that I see and I've experienced, I'm able to share with them, and they're in rooms that I'm not in. So I get them to carry my voice. So that's really helpful, and it helps them become better leaders. So that's me then valuing my own difference and showing them that value, and they can take that with them. I do find though sometimes we do rely quite heavily on data and strategy, which is important. But then what happens is that people kind of see it very theoretical. So you need to bring it down to the local level. So some of the things I've done to kind of create proximity, like last Black History Month, we did a quiz night, and it was a fun event, but you got all the staff there, not just leadership, but like rank and file staff. And then that kind of gave them proximity to the Black experience. And then we've also had like bystander training. And so what that is just familiarizing everybody with some of the, not just the microaggressions, but just situations where, so for instance, you see in a team and there's maybe people of different ethnicities or someone with a different ethnicity, and then they never seem to be the one that's pushed forward, or it seems to be that it's just one person in the team that gets all the opportunities. And it's, you know, getting people to recognize that, because I can see it straight off because I've experienced it. But if you've not had that happen to you, you might just think, oh, maybe that person isn't as competent as the other people, that's why they've been pushed forward. But, you know, if once you've had some kind of training, as was just said, you're able to recognize that, and then you can intervene, because these things only change when people at a local level, an operational level, are trained to intervene, because they realize the importance of diversity. And so when these things aren't addressed, they lose diversity. And if I'm honest, I think the way that things will change is when people start voting with their feet. So I've been in situations where I've left because you know, things aren't working for me, and then afterwards it's like, whoa, that was the only Black guy we had. And so I mean, I actually just to qualify, I am sort of leaving to go to another job, but that's not because of the situation I've had at Norton Rose, just because another job's come up. So just wanted to qualify that. But you will find people within firms who end up leaving because they're not getting the opportunities. And I've actually helped people, because I'm someone that I believe that it's not just for me to get forward, I need to pull other people up. So if I come across someone in a situation where I can see they're talented and they're not progressing, I'll connect them with one of my contacts. And I've done it already. So I've brought someone from my old company, well, not brought them, but I've informed them of an opportunity and recommended them, and they're now working as a colleague with me. And if I go elsewhere and I look back and I find that there are people who are not progressing, I'll do the same thing. And what will happen then is the firms and companies that are serious about diversity will retain their talent, or their Black and Asian and ethnic minority talent, and those that aren't will lose. So it will simply end up being, I guess, survival of the fittest. So it's something that we need to be serious about.
Yeah,
all right, yeah,
I agree. Yeah. And Sarah, I'm just going to put the same question to you, Clarissa, if that's okay.
Hi. I as a firm, we had already been focusing on BAME particularly, but also diversity and inclusion for a long time before Black Lives Matters and the tragic death of George Floyd. But we did a program following on from that focused on education and including unconscious bias, but also an education program with senior people from the NAACP, from Black judges in the States, but to really give a different view of those issues. And we've also done checklists and books to read and films to watch and books for our children to read. So a really firm-wide education system. Data is really important. I take Reg saying it's not just data, but we are lawyers and we like data, and we don't have enough of it. We need to be able to benchmark and say, is it getting better or is it getting worse? As I said earlier, one of my clients, Fort Explorers, got a whole new way of approaching data and how you get engagement across a big business in a different way. I think there are some other things. It's the small things. It's recruitment. Are you doing it so that people want to join you? One thing we found was when you take out the drink session of a trainee recruitment, you get wider BAME people coming to your business, because there are certain cultural things that perhaps exclude people who don't feel comfortable in those environments. Are you doing things that you're excluding people because they don't drink at all, either religiously or culturally? It's not the environment people feel comfortable on. When are you putting on events? Is it Ramadan? Is it a Jewish festival? Are you actually considering what else is going on in people's lives that exclude them unintentionally? When you do events around your office, are you having non-alcoholic drinks? Little things. I think a big thing is for our clients. Our clients are diverse. We work with a global industry, and we have diverse clients and diverse in-house lawyers. And we need you as clients to be saying, we need diverse teams working for us. We want a diverse list of arbitrators on our case, not just male, pale and stale. We want the change, because if you're a client, you've got money power behind you and you can make big change. One thing we did, and this is my last thing before I hand back, because I know you want time for questions. As part of our International Women's Day, we asked all our firm, our global firm, to make a pledge, and it was to make one small change for diversity. So not just gender, but diversity. And we sent round to clients, to people in all the offices. We got people to do videos from our managing partner to PAs in the office to pledge one small thing. And that's what I'm going to give all of you who have joined us on this webinar, the challenge. Think of one small thing you can do this year to change your office. It can be, I set up a parent support group to help that group of people, but it can be to bring someone to a meeting, to mentor someone, to sponsor someone, to make sure someone in your team who doesn't normally speak, to encourage them to speak out in the meeting. It doesn't have to be big. Small changes are the way to make big changes.
I think that's a really nice idea, actually, and I hope people do take that away with them. So I'm going to invite everyone to unmute themselves and we'll have an open discussion, but I'd like to start it, if I could, by asking Shabnam a question. So Shabnam, you mentioned earlier that, you know, your parents weren't from a legal background, and that may have limited your amount of contacts you had. And I know, I'm not sure about the UK, but I know in Ireland, it's kind of all about who you know in law. And it's a really, kind of comes down to family experience. You know, there is a lot of that. I'm not saying it's purely that, but there is quite a lot of that here anyway. Are there communities or networks or forums that you are aware of that could help people that have been in your situation or are currently in your situation where they don't have that database of, you know, that address book of contacts, or, you know, is there anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I wish there was the kind of support that there is now. When I was, you know, training, you know, I graduated 20 years ago, and I was a little bit naive, and I didn't, you know, I trained as a barrister originally, but maybe through my own incompetence as well, and partly through lack of contacts, it was a struggle to get pupillage. And I know 100% that a lot of the time they saw my form and that was it. They didn't go any further. They probably saw my name and, you know, kind of made all these kind of presumptions about what I was, and I wasn't a good fit. But I think in terms of organisations now, there are a lot more for people from different backgrounds. Obviously, you've got the Black Solicitors Network, you've got the women lawyers groups, we've got that at Russell Cook and various other firms. There's Pakistani Lawyers Network, Asian Lawyers Network, Muslim lawyers, and that was something really good that Clarissa touched on, that, you know, you're sometimes excluding different people by the kind of events that you're running. And I mean, I remember going to a women in law summit, and I was a little bit disappointed to hear a woman say that at their firm they taught women to play golf. And I was like, no, you're trying to fit into what they want, you know, they being sort of, you know, the mainstream, I suppose. And so that kind of disappointed me a bit. So I'm very big on sort of remaining your authentic self. But there are a couple of organisations that I've recently got involved in that are partly to do with maybe not who you know as such, but a lot more about diversity and destigmatizing mental health and being open. And one of them I just wanted to say was an organisation called Court Power, which has just been started by some students from South Bank University. So if you can check that out, and it's just, you know, just doing your research, because there are sort of smaller groups, and as Clarissa said, it's the small things that can make the big changes. But I really like that idea of think of one small thing that you can do to make your organisation more diverse. Definitely.
I just wanted to say, I don't think it's about what contacts you have in law. I had also no family members who are lawyers, a doctor and a university professor, teacher as a parent. But I think it's about building on your own networks. It's about networking, and and it's Shabnam's point earlier, use your diversity to your advantage. So when I go into an event where I'm networking, I wear the bright red or pink or blue dress to stand out from the sea of suits. I use my network, my diverse networks, to try and bring in work. And I think that's where you're at an advantage if you can bring in work from your communities or your connections. It's about those connections and networking. That's how you really get on. It's not just about who you know in the legal profession. I think that's the least that shouldn't affect your future at all.
Has anyone else got any other questions? Oh, Sephora? Oh, I think you're on mute, Sephora. You just unmute yourself there.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was going to say I agree totally with Clarissa about creating your network, because a lot of the roles I've gotten is literally via LinkedIn, is via me connecting with someone or someone connecting with me. So I do highly encourage, especially those who are younger trying to get into law, connect with us. You know, this is a good opportunity to connect with Clarissa. It's a good opportunity to connect with Shabnam or myself, and ask questions. Yes, I'm not a lawyer, but obviously I'm currently working in a law firm at the moment. So it's all about doing that and not being afraid as well. I think there's this stigma about rejection, but it's not about it. Don't think about the rejection. Think about the opportunity. Think about the fact that you took a bold step to be more confident, and you took a step to come out of your comfort zone. It's more about your character being built in that. And then as time goes along, you don't know what that can reap. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
And you can give things to people. Don't think just because you're asking someone to mentor you or sponsor you that it's only one way. As Reg talked about, there's reverse mentoring is really important. So think about what you've got to give, not just what you're taking. And that's for me, when I mentor people, it's what I learn from them.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
be confident.
Reg, did you want to say something there? I see your hands up.
Yeah, sorry, you still can't see me, can you?
No.
Sorry, I'm still frozen. Right, fair enough. Yeah.
So that's good.
So I think like now, as Clarissa was saying, there's so much opportunity. There's just like I ended up helping young people because like I couldn't go back in time, but I wanted to give them things that I didn't have. So you can do the research firstly, and then obviously you've got LinkedIn, as I just mentioned, and I really went in on my LinkedIn profile. So when I wanted to get into D&I, I realised that I didn't have the usual background. So I started volunteering. I started, because I knew about like delivering employability training. So I volunteered, and I volunteered for a church. I volunteered for another charity at the mayor's office, and then they would write me recommendations on LinkedIn. So that was a way in raising my profile. I worked on like a book with my cousin about diversity. Actually, just like BB that helped me. And then I started writing my own articles on LinkedIn. There's lots of things you can do to kind of, as has been said, trade on your diversity. So, and you just got to strategize. And I think even being from a background or having a characteristic where doors don't swing open to you, it means that, or you're an outsider, it means that you kind of look at the world in a different way. So having been an outsider, like I remember growing up, I would always say like, well, why is this happening? Like, why are we all poor? Why is this? And people who were uncomfortable but sat comfortably in their discomfort would be like, well, you know what, Reggie, it is what it is. Like it's just how things are. That's how it rolls. And so they never really questioned it. But because I was like an outsider amongst other outsiders, I was always questioning things. And so that meant that I then was very strategic in what I did. So even when I got into Norton Rose, I made sure I got to go to external events because I knew I had to raise my profile not just within the firm, but within the sector, because the probability was, from my experience, that I'm not going to progress like vertically just like that. I'll probably have to go diagonally. So I made sure to go to external events on the proviso of like, yeah, I'm just like learning about the sector, but I'll go there because I needed to make contacts. And then once I was in these spaces, when there were questions to be asked, I asked the question, and they were the questions of the moment, So I remember there was a question asked about social mobility, and I said, well, that's great, but once they get here, once you get them in, what are you doing to help them progress? Because I've been in places where people feel comfortable because they don't know how to speak, and so they feel they can't really connect with people. And so, but because I look different, they would feel they could be drawn to me. And because I asked that question at that event, like about 3 or 4 people came to speak to me immediately afterwards, and then as a result of that, they wrote an article on me, a spotlight or something, and then that then made my profile. So it's all of these things that you can do. It's the moves you make because you know that the doors aren't going to swing open for you normally. So you're very strategic. You think like 3 or 4 steps ahead, and so bring that with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think the key kind of takeaways from everything you guys have said are get involved, be confident, don't be scared, build that network, and the world's your oyster. I'm just a bit conscious of time, so I'm going to hand you guys back over to Zoe, who's going to wrap things up.
Oh, thank you, Ashlyn. Thank you to our host, Ashlyn, our attendees, and of course, the amazing speakers. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out today to help with this event. Thank you. We hope our attendees found it interesting and insightful. And most of all, we hope we've helped you get comfortable with the uncomfortable. This is a live session. It has been recorded, so anyone that's registered will receive a copy of this. If anyone submitted questions that we didn't have a chance to answer, we'll try our best to get back to each and every one. Once again, thanks from everyone at Career Legal, DVF and HYF, and keep an eye on our website for more live panel discussions, www.careerlegal.co.uk. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.